World Insight coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, a controversial proposal. Turkey and EU leaders are discussing a plan that could potentially send refugees back to Turkey. And we sit down with Eddie the Eagle Edwards, a British skier whose underdog turn at the 1988 Winter Olympics inspired a nation, and now a movie even featuring Hugh Jackman. We begin today's show with the EU summit, where EU leaders have agreed on a joint position for a proposal, a possible deal with Turkey to tackle the ongoing migrant crisis. Talks between the Turkish Prime Minister and the EU members are underway. Can a solution be reached? Before we go to our panel, let's have a look at the latest situation.
An ongoing struggle. Tens of thousands of migrants are stranded on the Greece-Macedonian border, where they are facing poor conditions as they wait for news of their fates. On Thursday, EU leaders struggled to reach a joint position on a potential deal with Turkey, but ultimately came together before meeting the Turkish Prime Minister. The proposed deal would send all new illegal migrants that cross from Turkey into the Greek islands back to Turkey. Under the one-for-one principle, for every refugee sent back to Turkey, another Syrian from a Turkish refugee camp would be resettled in the EU. The plan also includes additional financial aid for Turkey, besides the £3 billion already offered late last year by Brussels. Talks on Turkey's EU membership and visa-free access to Schengen countries have also been approved. The EU side also promised action.
Dass es doch recht schnell erfolgen soll.
This is to be implemented fairly quickly. We will have to be seconded pretty quickly because we all know, obviously, that if the matters take too long, then it will indeed have this pull factor.
However, the deal has come under fire from aid agencies and even EU leaders for being potentially illegal and impractical.
Because I think that proposed package is very complicated, it will be very difficult to implement, and it is on the edge of international law.
Meanwhile, there are also concerns that Turkey is holding Europe to ransom, knowing how desperate EU leaders are to strike a deal before the spring weather entices more migrants to cross over. Turkey reiterated its stance before meeting EU leaders.
For us, for Turkey, the refugee issue is not an issue of bargaining, but an issue of value, all humanitarian values as well as European values.
Since the last EU-Turkey summit on March 7th, almost 11,000 people have reached Greece, bringing the total who have traveled that route to 144,000 so far this year. Whatever the result of the current EU-Turkey talks, the immediate future seems bleak for these refugees.
And for more on the latest situation, we are joined here in the Beijing studio, Professor Wang Yiwei from the Renmin University. He is the director of the Center for EU Studies over there. And also, meanwhile, joining us in Nantes, France, we have Mr. Yves Pascu, who is the director of Migration and Mobility Services at the European Policy Center. And also in Istanbul, Turkey, we are joined by Dr. Savaş Biser, who is the political science instructor at Istanbul University and War Academy. Welcome to the three of you. Gentlemen, first of all, let me go to the guest in Nantes, France. Are we going to see a breakthrough in terms of Turkish possible entry into the EU bloc, which has been an exchange condition for Turkish concession to the EU about the migrants?
Accession to the European Union for Turkey is not the top priority in this deal. This is neither the top priority for EU member states. This is part of a package which is now being negotiated, and according to the latest news, I think that apparently we reached an agreement. So the two key priorities which are on the table on the Turkish side is the visa liberalization process, which should be implemented in June, and being able to get back some money from the European Union to Turkey in order to manage the situation.
What about from the Turkey side, Dr. Bicher? The latest situation, we do not know exactly the details of the agreement, even though some of the outlines were being made by the Turkish Prime Minister. What more can you tell us at this moment about the details of the agreement?
Yeah, the Turkish side is very keen to solve this problem. I do assume that both sides is very eager to solve this problem. And if you check out the draft agreement, the draft deal articles from the paper they spit out yesterday, we assume that both sides have to decide on this deal, because only the three part of this eighth part of article is related to Turkish-EU relations, but the rest of them is much more important than the EU-Turkish membership discussions. First of all, mass returns. Mass returns are problematic, and the doubts over one in and one out process, and the visa-free access to EU is much less important than these two issues, according to the international law from the Turkish perspective.
Obviously, Mr. Pashku, you see your Turkish counterpart have a very different priorities when it comes to the agreement or possible agreement.
Well, there are different objectives, but there are also different obligations. We have to keep in mind that the European Union and its member states are not able to do whatever they want. So during the week and after the statement which was issued on the 7th of March, before the 2 days meeting, there were lots of questions, and in particular political and more particularly legal issues which were on the table. A lot of people have been working on those legal issues, and apparently, according to the latest news we have, there is going to be a clear distinction in the so-called deal, or in the agreement which is going to be settled between the European Union and Turkey. On the one hand, the European Union member states are going to deal with all asylum seekers arriving in Greece. This is a duty, this is a legal duty the member states have to implement and respect. So any asylum seeker coming to Greece from Turkey, his or her application is going to be examined in the EU and under EU rules. The case of third country nationals not authorized to enter and reside into the European Union, those ones are going to be readmitted to Turkey. And on the basis of the agreement, the one for one rule, every readmitted irregular migrant from Greece to Turkey is going to open the legal way for one refugee in Turkey to the European Union.
Mr. Wang, Professor Wang, you've been attentive listening to your two colleagues. Obviously, this is one of those series of discussions going on inside Europe about what to do. How much significance will this apparent agreement be, even though we still do not know the very details of this agreement at this moment, just came out. In terms of resolving the migrant crisis, this is going to be the makeup, or this is going to be a significant deal, at least for now?
Well, I think to make a balance, the Turkey's demands and the Europeans' urgent challenges. Turkey is very important for the refugee crisis, because last year more than 1.2 million refugees poured into the European Union. 80% through Turkey by Aegean Sea to from Greece. So Turkey suffered a lot from the refugee crisis. I think they accept 2.7 million, much more than the European Union. Turkey has a legal to demand more payment from the European Union. At the same time, also Turkey applied for the membership for decades. So it need to accelerate of this process. So it's about the both sides of their requirements
Yeah, but what about the significance of this in terms of dealing with the issue?
Well, it's about the value, as according to the Prime Minister of the Turkey said, because European Union felt a huge pledge from the international law that it should accept the legal migrants. This is the Turkey want to make a deal with the European Union.
But Mr. Bisher, may I ask you about this? What has Turkey had in mind? I mean, on the one hand, you've already seen your capital being troubled by some of the terrorist attacks, at least just a few days ago. And they had possibly have an impact or some links to the recent crisis going on? Secondly, you also see the EU side not necessarily willing to explore full-scale the discussion about EU membership with Turkey based on this agreement and even others. Why is Turkey so interested in having this deal? To earn some money, or actually to earn some hearts and minds among their European counterparts?
Okay, let's start with the first question. Turkey declared for a long time saying that the safe area in the north of Syria will protect not only the Turkey but also the Europe, not only from the immigrants, illegal immigrants and the human trafficking, but also the terrorist attacks, not only in Turkey but also in Europe. We faced that concerns in the past 6 months, even in Europe and in Turkey as well. Last explosions in Turkey showing that from the origin of that explosions from the different part of the terrorist organizations. Turkey is right. It is necessary to build up a safety zone between this conflict area and the Europe, because the immigrants mostly maybe the 90% of them using the landway from Turkey to Greece or Bulgaria to enter the European Union countries. This number showing that the Turkey is necessarily need to the safe zone in the southeastern part of Turkey. And the second part, EU membership issues. Whenever Turkey faced this issue, the only counterpart against this issue will work with Turkey is the European Union countries. So if you put something on the table, even the money or the human rights issues, you have to talk all the details of the issue. But anyway, the European Union and Turkish relationship in this deal or the agreement, not important than the getting something against the international law and the European laws as well.
Okay, Mr. Pascoe, what is to the Europeans that you think Turkey is extremely interested in this deal? As you mentioned, is it as what Mr. Bashir mentioned, which is probably a humanitarian role in this regard, and in a way try to solve some already migrants inside Turkey from Syria and some of the other countries? Or there is long-term strategic thinking over there by Turkey? If it was the latter, are the Europeans really going to appreciate it? I mean, this is a crisis you're facing and therefore you're willing to reach a deal with anyone if it's helpful.
Well, I don't think that EU member states do have any kind of long-term strategy in this story. It is pretty clear that for the last couple of years and before summer 2015, member states were not thinking about the situation in Syria and in the neighboring countries in Syria and in particular Turkey. They have awaited the crisis to hit the European soil to react. Now they are trapped into a situation where they have to find out measures and to take decisions in order, and I'm quoting here what EU leaders want, to stem the flows from the outside, in particular from Turkey to Greece. Now, if you have a look to a map, it is pretty simple to consider that in between Syria and the European Union, Turkey is a transit country with which European leaders have to collaborate. Now, as they are reacting, and as they are reacting also having in mind their public opinion, the big priority leaders have is to stem the flows, as I said, and decrease the numbers of people arriving in the EU. And in this regard, they are trying to do two main things. On the one hand, they are trying to negotiate with Turkey and say, well, all the people who are not asylum seekers to Turkey. That's the first point. And the second one, which is more on the incentives, is to be able also to close and I here quoting again the words of the EU leaders, to close the Western Balkan routes, because many asylum seekers and also migrants thought beforehand that once they would have been able to reach Greece, they would then have been able to move northwards easily, in between brackets, from Greece to the other part of the European Union through the Balkan route. Here there is another point where they have said the Balkan route is now closed, which means that there is no more incentive for people to move from Turkey to Greece and then from Greece to the other parts of the European territory.
Saying is one thing, believing is another thing, acting probably is another one. So, Professor Wang, even though there could be an agreement, once again, details we do not know because it just came out, will that be able to turn people around from their original planning? From Syria to Turkey, from Turkey to Greece, from Greece to different parts of the European countries? First question. Second question, of course, should that be the thing done by the European countries? After all, the ideology at the very beginning, at least, should be about to provide humanitarian support to all of these asylum seekers and migrants.
Well, Chancellor Angela Merkel said that negotiations will be anything but easy. I think they can reach the deal, but there may be some difficulties. The European Union should keep the balance about the values. According to the international law, they should accept migrants from the Middle East. At the same time, they should manage the expectations, because so many refugees are pouring into the European Union, including Germany. The leaders suffered a lot from the poor situation, and then so the Turkey is the key to make the deal. But the Turkish demand that they need more money. Actually, the European Union agreed 3 billion euros. Should send back to Turkey. It's not in practice, actually. So now they promise that should accelerate so-called the process of the disbursement. And then Turkey demand additional $3 billion. But where the money comes from? It's from the European budget, European Union budget, or it's from the distribution of the member states. So now still also negotiate among inside of the European Union. At the same time, for the visa, I think the European Union, Cyprus is very against of that, because Turkey still occupies the north of Cyprus. So if it's easy for Turkish citizens to go to Schengen, and then it's called troubles for Cyprus and Greece.
So I have to go back to you, Mr. Pascual. You heard our Chinese colleagues talk about some of the technical problems, but all of these details could be devils in terms of guarantee the success of any agreement between EU and Turkey. So what about these technical details? When EU countries among yourselves will not be able to reach an agreement on some of these details, is a deal still a deal?
Well, I think that here we need to distinguish two periods of times. We are today dealing with Turkey and trying to find out solutions in order to have an appropriate, I would say, behavior in between two partners, the European Union and Turkey, in order to decrease the number of arrivals. But this is today's priority. Tomorrow would be the implementation of those rules. And I've heard the previous commentator talking about money. This is one issue which is going now to be on the table, because we will have not only to grant additional money to Turkey, but we will also have to make our hotspots functioning on an operational manner. And here it is going to be extremely difficult to be able to send in Greece and on the different hotspots the appropriate number of people to deal with those issues. So here, this is the operational side of the deal, which will need to be implemented by tomorrow. But after tomorrow, there is going also to be a series of discussions which are going to take place between EU member states, and in particular on the different proposals which have been tabled by the European Commission the last couple of months. This entails not only a European border and coast guard unit, and here we can assume that an agreement would be found in the next couple of months in order to strengthen EU's external border. And another issue which is going to come on the table, which is going to be extremely difficult to negotiate, would be the revision of the asylum rules. And here, divisions which we encountered before at EU level will revive.
Okay, Mr. Bichir, you've heard already your European counterpart articulate the challenges from their side. Well, understanding the difficulties they have in implementing this deal, the recently agreed deal, what many also wonder at the very beginning, the bottom line is for Turkey, because these asylum seekers, migrants as well, might have an impact on the security situation inside your countries as well, not to mention the latest attacks. And therefore, has Turkey been streamlining its own policies and thinking regarding what to do? Besides talking to your European counterparts about what their concerns are and how you are going to work with them about their concerns, while at the same time maybe deal with money-wise some of the current challenges you are facing. But what about the long term? Have you been thinking about that?
Yes, my European counterpart is very right to touch that point. Because the money issue is really, from my perspective, not important from the Turkish side. Because Turkey already spent the same amount of money so far, more or less $7 billion dollars. Yes, but the second part is the UN officials have said that is the returns can be legal. Means that from Greece to Turkey, if the mass returns have to be planned, the Turkey should provide the coming that mass people the access to work, education, and the most important of all, the secure environment. And Turkey is seeking the safe and secure environment and the work that people needs more money, but Turkey can assume that all this kind of responsibilities already did this kind of difficulties and assume this responsibilities so far.
Interesting. Professor Wang, really? Exercising all of these responsibilities, we already see some of the terrorist attacks inside Turkey. We do not know who exactly conducted, even though the Turkish government is saying one thing while the rest of the world is thinking about different possibilities. So can Turkey really do what it does, what it promises? And also, it's just the ball being kicked to the Turkish side, so the other side, from the European side, will feel much at peace, do not know yet what the result could be.
Well, Turkey definitely is the buffer zone between European and Asian countries.
Yes, it is, but the question is, has they or will they be able to implement what they have promises?
Well, it's difficult because the terrorist attack is not just from the refugees. They are from the Kurds separatists, the domestic
According to the Turkish government,
yes,
that
yes.
is.
So there are lots of things, of course, between Turkey and the European Union to do for the border control, for the security, the negotiation with Syria, and of course that brings some hopes.
All right. Professor Wang Yiwei and also Mr. Basgou coming from France, Dr. Bichir coming from Turkey. Thank you so much for being with us. We have been discussing the situation for quite some time. We hope there will be some real progress and real implementation, which might have a result. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Stay with us here on World Insight. We've got our final segment coming right up. We sit down with Eddie the Eagle Edwards, a British skier, whose underdog turn at the 1988 Winter Olympics inspired a nation, and now a movie starring Hugh Jackman. You're watching World Insight on CCTV News. I'm Tian Wei. The Chinese city of Beijing and Zhangjiakou will jointly host the 2022 Winter Olympic Games. Preparation is underway in both cities. For China, it's not just about the honor of hosting a mega international sports meet, the exhilarating experience of which was deeply felt during the Beijing Summer Games in 2008, but rather to instill both the culture and spirit of winter sports among 1.4 billion people and many more from all over the world. The story of Michael Eddie Edwards is a pure reflection of exactly that spirit. He is remembered in the history of the Winter Olympic Games as someone with an unconquerable spirit and profound love for winter sports. I met him during his first trip to China recently and had a great chat. Before we played that conversation, let's take a look at this.
As your coach, I think you're crazy. But as your friend, fly.
An incredible experience, a passionate man, a true story. During the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary, Canada, Eddie set a British record during one of his jumps. Although he didn't win any awards, Eddie captured the hearts of fans with his never-say-die attitude. Edwards started his sports career as a downhill skier. To improve his chances to qualify for the Olympic Games, he moved to the US to train and switched to ski jumping because it was more affordable. He was handicapped by his nearsightedness, requiring him to wear thick eyeglasses at all times. That severely impaired his eyesight during the jumps that made him famous. He is a legend in the history of the Winter Olympics. Today, his story was made into a Hollywood film, Eddie the Eagle. Taron Egerton, who played him in the film, expressed his enthusiasm for the role.
Well, I was a huge fan when I, heard about Eddie, which happened when we first started talking about the movie, but we always wanted to create something that was very affectionate and celebratory and, championed him and reminded people that actually what he did was a really cool, amazing thing,
During his recent trip to Beijing, Eddie the Eagle recounted his story.
You finally made it.
That's right, and that was the realization for me, because it was a dream since I was about 8 years old to represent my country at international level and to hopefully go for an Olympic Games. I didn't know that I was going to do it.
You were quite a kid, I have to say.
Oh yes, yes. I used to watch the Olympics on TV and watch our athletes performing, and I thought it'd be great, to be so good at your sport, to be able to represent your country at international level and wear a tracksuit with Great Britain on the back and all that kind of thing. And I thought it was lovely. And
idol at the time, when you were a kid? Do you have an idol at the time when you were a kid?
I did, but not British. Most of my idols tended to be international.
It's okay, you can name them.
Yeah.
This is not necessarily a British show.
Back then it was people like Daley Thompson was great. Torval and Dean back then was fantastic. All those guys.
But
going back when I was 8 years old, I don't remember the names of many of the athletes, but as I got older, and then when I studied skiing, it was Ingemar Stenmark and Phil and Steve Mayer, the Mayer brothers, and Veireiter and Wernsberger and Franz Klammer and all those sort of people. So yeah, I remember them quite well.
And you were among them eventually at the opening ceremony.
At the opening ceremony, yes. I arrived at Calgary, went to the opening ceremony and saw the Olympic torch being run around the track, and then they lit the Olympic flame, and I thought, gosh, this is it. This is the realization of my ambition, my dream to get to an Olympic Games, and I finally made it against all the odds. I had no money, no training facilities, no snow, no ski jumps, no trainer, no sponsors, nothing. And yet still I managed to get to those Olympic Games and represent my country, and it was wonderful.
I don't know you, but when I was extremely excited, sometimes I got lost. I don't feel that I know what to do next. What about the opening ceremony right after it? How did you prepare yourself to eventually go to the specific category you need to participate? Prepare yourself, cool-minded, make sure all the gears are right. You got the right mind.
Yeah.
Everything. How did that happen?
Well, it didn't. It didn't really. At the opening ceremonies, it was great because once they lit that Olympic flame, it was the kind of the pinnacle, the climax of the show. And then I just sat there and watched that Olympic flame for about an hour. And then somebody came and nudged me, and they said, "Oh, it's time to go." And then I sort of came to and realised that the stadium was empty. Everybody had gone, and I was still looking at that Olympic flame. And then I went. Well, my problems were really. There were a lot of problems at Calgary with equipment. When I flew to the Olympic Games, flew to Calgary, my bindings had been crushed on the plane and I had no spare bindings. So I had to look around for some spare stuff, alternatives, and eventually found them. But it was one big mad rush going from here to there, and I was being dragged here and dragged there for interviews. And it was getting a bit chaotic, but I thought it was happening to everybody because I thought it was the Olympic Games and all the athletes, it was the same.
Part
so
of
I
the
just
story, you thought.
went with the flow. But I didn't realise that I was getting a little bit more attention than some of the other people, but that sort of came afterwards. But it was chaotic, but it was good fun too. It was 2 weeks and yet it flew by because I was doing either interviews, 24 hours a day, but it was great fun. I didn't want to sleep because it was such a dream for me to get to those Olympic Games. I wanted to enjoy every single second.
Not to even blink your eyes.
Not even blink. Don't go to sleep. Just enjoy the whole experience.
So what about that jump?
The jump, yes. The big hill, the 120 metre, or they called it the 90 metre back then. And there was 89,500 people at the bottom watching, and they all started shouting, Eddie, Eddie, and I was sort of waving to them, and they were kind of pushing me, inspiring me to go down and jump, and I was really, really scared because I hadn't done many 120 metre ski jumps, and I'm sure their cheering must have carried me the 71.5 metres that I jumped, or 71 metres that I jumped at Calgary. And the last 5 metres, I think it was because of the noise and the rush from all these people. It was fantastic. But it was a beautiful day, blue sky, there was no wind, and you know, I went for it, and it was wonderful.
You know, it's different. Some people have to be in their own world in order to perform very well. Not to be encouraged or discouraged by the surrounding.
Yeah.
What about for you? Is the atmosphere important to you? Were people's cheering important to you? Or you were very much concentrating on what you need to do, technically speaking, one after another step?
Yeah, I have a sequence that I go through when I'm doing my ski jumping.
Tell me about it.
It starts sort of first thing in the morning, putting on my clothes. I always put it on in a certain sequence. Left foot, right foot, that kind of thing. Left arm, right arm. And it was the same with when I got to the ski jump. I would put my suit on. I would put my left boot on first, then my right.
Almost like a ritual in a way.
It is, because that sets the whole thought process. It helps me to start preparing, and it was right up to the point when I sit on that bar. I put my skis down, I put my left ski on first, then my right, I check my left, I check my right, check my goggles, I walk out, turn, check my bindings again, left and then right, and so I go through that whole sequence, and that's when I really focus on the jump. But in the meantime, before that, I still like to try and relax as much as possible. If I'm nervous, I tend to be quite happy and bouncy and energetic, and when there was all that crowd at the bottom, they were all starting to shout. I wanted to acknowledge the crowd, so I was sort of waving and things. I didn't want to ignore them. A lot of them were there to watch me ski jump. Some of them were hoping maybe that I would crash and burn and break arms and legs. But others were saying, you know, this is wonderful. But yeah, I want to acknowledge the crowd and say...
Did you try to persuade yourself, I need to be calm now, because I'm gonna do what I've been preparing for a long time. This is it.
That's right, I do. But that's when I get my skis, when it's my turn to go. I usually start preparing 2 or 3 jumpers before it's my turn to go, and that's when I switch and I turn into ski jumping mode. And then I put my skis down, put my left ski on first, then the right, then the whole process starts to think about my technique, what I've got to do, and then walk out onto the bar, sit, turn, prepare, and then I go. I wave to the coach. At the time it was the American team who was my flag man. He would sort of flag and say, yep.
How have you been dealing with injuries? Especially, you know, you picked up ski jump very late.
Very late.
In your sports career.
Yes.
And you were not having much professional support.
No professional support.
It's really scary. It sounds really scary to me.
It is. It is very scary. And
do you feel scared when you think back?
Oh, yeah, even now. I haven't ski jumped for 20 years, and I ski jumped about 6 weeks ago, and I was very scared then. I'm always scared when I do my ski jumping, but it's important to be scared. Because when you're scared, you then focus and you concentrate. Because you know that if you get it wrong, the consequences could be horrendous. You could kill yourself, you could paralyze yourself, you could break arms and legs and all sorts of things.
But you did, I mean, you did injure yourself.
Oh, yes, I did.
How have you been dealing with them?
It was very difficult, because even at Calgary, I was still very much a beginner. I'd only been jumping for 20 months. Everybody else had been jumping for 20 years.
Yes.
And so every time I got onto a ski jump, whether it was a 90 or 120 metre, there was always that thought that this could be my last ski jump. I could just do it totally wrong, land on my head, and that would be it. It would all be over. So there was always that nervousness and that trepidation that this could be my last jump, so I've got to really focus and concentrate. And I did get it wrong a few times. Luckily enough, I didn't get it wrong to such a degree that I would kill myself, but I have fractured my skull a few times. I broke my jaw, collarbone, ribs, damaged my kidneys, damaged my knee, but I've got off quite lightly, so I think I've done okay, really.
Now when you think back, is it necessary for you to jump into the ski jump?
Ski jumping gives me a tremendous buzz, and although I'm very, very nervous when I'm at the top of the jump, because if I get it wrong, I could really hurt myself. But that's what I loved about the ski jumping, the psychology, that it's 95% psychological and only 5% physical effort. But I love that. I love being out of my comfort zone. I love pushing myself mentally, physically. And that gives me such a buzz.
Some compare you to be quote-unquote the winter Forrest Gump. But I don't know, do you feel comfortable with that analogy?
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's cool.
You watched that movie?
I have, yes, a few times. Love it. It's great.
Why?
It's just a really nice, feel-good, inspirational film. And same as mine.
What was it like for you from a ski jumper to a national and even international hero, and then the main character of possibly one of the most popular movies of the year?
Yeah.
What is that transition like for you?
It's it feels strange. It was not something that I wanted. It was not something that I was aiming for. It was kind of like a bonus. It was the byproduct of ultimately my dream to get to those Olympic Games. For me, getting to those Olympic Games was just the greatest thing, and I loved being there. What I wanted to do at Calgary was get a little bit of attention, turn that attention into sponsorship, and then carry on for the 92, 94, 98 and 2002 Olympics, and got better and better at ski jumping. And that's what I really wanted to do. When I got to Calgary, I got christened Eddie the Eagle. I thought, oh, that's cool. I wish I'd thought of it. But it's a great name. But through those Olympics, when people were watching and loved me being there, and then I got so much attention and it snowballed, got out of control, I kind of went with it, and I enjoyed it. But it was not something that was not my real aim. My real aim was to carry on my ski jumping and get better and better. Unfortunately, the authorities wouldn't let me carry on ski jumping, so I took on the role as Eddie the Eagle and travelled all over the world, and it was great fun, and I loved doing it. But it was not something that becoming famous wasn't something that I was aiming for. It was just a byproduct.
Do you like
I'm glad it happened, and I still enjoy it now, and having the film come out has brought it all up all over again 28 years later.
Have you watched the movie yourself?
I have seen the movie twice.
Okay,
in
so
its
give
entirety.
us some suggestion. Give us some suggestion. Which detail you want us to specifically pay attention to?
Oh.
And that would really help us to understand Eddie.
Gosh, the ones that really start making me kind of well up. I love the stuff at the beginning as a child. And doing my kind of things, doing my training to become an athlete. I loved that bit. That was lovely.
Why is that?
It's just, it reminded me of when I was a kid. You know, I used to put things on and do weights and throw things like a javelin.
Just to be there.
Just to be there and do the hurdles down the street. And yeah, we used to fall over all the time.
That's one suggestion. What about the other suggestion?
I love the bit where my mum had a tin that she gave me that I used to put all my broken glasses, you know, just like these.
By the way, this is a cool glass.
Yeah, thank you very much. I still got them. These are the ones I wore at Calgary.
There we go, that's true.
and when I was a child, I used to break my glasses all the time. Not only, you know, building and playing, just every time I was breaking my glasses. So I put all these glasses in a tin, and then my mum gave me the medal, you know, my tin to put my medals in. That was a lovely moment. Yeah. But the biggest thing is towards the end when I actually do that ski jump at the Calgary Olympics. It's just a wonderful climax.
I'm really looking forward to it, Eddie, you know, after talking to you even more. and finally, before we go, you know, China, two cities, Zhangjiakou and Beijing, are holding their hands to host the Winter Olympic Games 2022.
I know.
Are you going to be here?
I want to compete. I'm looking forward to watching it, and I think China will do a fantastic job. So I wish them all the luck for the Winter Olympics.
Any advice?
I hope China, if they start training hard now, they've got, 6 years, so keep training, get your head down, get working, and I'm sure you'll have that gold medal on your chest, so I'll be rooting for you.
And get prepared. Left, right.
Left, right, left, right. Or right, left, whichever floats your boat.
Right, that's true. Thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you for talking to us, and all the best to the movie and your story.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Eddie the Eagle in person, and the same movie with the same name is coming up today. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of the program, visit our website. Just type in World Insight CCTV News into your search and you'll be able to find us. I'm Tian Wei. For myself and everyone at the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next week for more insights from across China and around the world.